Good evening and welcome to America is Talking. I'm your host, Cindy Drucare. There's still a lot going on in a lot of the swing states, different legislative procedures. Sorry about that. Different legal procedures still going on in several states. Today, we will zero in on Georgia and Pennsylvania. First, let's go to Georgia. There's been a lot of activity in the last few days. There's at least 3 legal cases still going on. And there's a move to have a hearing at the end of this week. And there's also going to be a move to hold a special session in the legislature to review all of the irregularities and everything that's been going on in Georgia. So joining us tonight to try to make sense of all of this, we are joined by, we're joined by Brad Carver. And he is the GOP chairman of Georgia's 11th Congressional District, which includes Fulton County, which is Atlanta, where most of the focus is right now. And we're also joined by Garland Favorito. He's the co-founder of Voters Organized for Trusted Election Results in Georgia. And he's been following all of this very closely too. Gentlemen, welcome.
Cindy, thanks for having us on. We appreciate it. I had swimming down here.
I'm sure my head was swimming just trying to introduce you. So, like I said, there's 3 lawsuits going on, and there's going to be a hearing on Thursday, and a lot of the focus is on Fulton, where a lot of the irregularities have been pointed to. Brad, why don't you just start by giving us a sense of what's going on there, what's most important to pay attention to at this stage of the game in Georgia?
Well, it's a great point. We do have the ongoing litigation that we're aware of. There actually is going to be a hearing on Friday in federal court. And so that's going to be something definitely stay tuned on for Friday. But also, we need to look to the legislature. As you mentioned, there's going to be a Senate hearing on Thursday, and that's going to center on election irregularities and the Dominion voting system. We expect this to be similar to what's happened already in Pennsylvania and most recently in Arizona, and soon to happen in Michigan. And we expect that to be focused on Georgia and Georgia issues. But that brings to light that our legislature is not in session. We are a part-time legislature. We ended back in June after the COVID cut us short. They ended the session. And so for the legislature to be called back in full, they'd actually have to be called by the governor into special session, or the legislature can do it on its own with a vote of 60% of each chamber. That's a pretty high hurdle. The Republicans do have a majority in both chambers. That was narrowed a little bit in this last election, but they do have the votes if everybody stood on board for it. But I think that's a really tall order, especially if you consider Fulton County and some of our other inner core metro Atlanta suburban counties. That might be a tough push for them because in a lot of those places, they did better than the president in those inner core counties. Very different in the outer core counties and the rural areas. But when we focus on Fulton County and these other places, it might be a tough sell for them.
Okay, so the direction that it looks like Pennsylvania and today Arizona are going in is to bring it to the legislature, to get the legislature to kind of reclaim the power to appoint the electors. And that's what you're talking about here, but just to even get them in session to vote on that, which would be a simple majority vote, as I understand it, right? But they still need 60% to bring the House into session. That's what you're saying.
That's correct. So the governor can call a special session. He's been discussing that for a while. We had Hurricane Matthew, which was one of the most devastating hurricanes in Georgia history. Was a Category 3 when it got to Southwest Georgia, and we still have a lot of relief efforts that are needed to be dealt with on that. But right now, the governor's indicated that if they were called back in a special session, that would be the only agenda item for them to deal with, and that these election reform type ideas need to wait until the full session starts in January. So if the legislature were to try to override that and do it on their own, then they would have to be called by a 60% vote of each chamber, and I think that's a high order, or that's a tough hurdle to cross.
Okay, so that's not going to be the route probably in Georgia. So that means how can these lawsuits play out, and what's kind of the hope there in terms of either not certifying the election, or I guess that's the first step. So what's the Yeah, what are things
Well,
to note?
I think that the most really the thing to focus the most on and where we've seen the most irregularities has centered around the absentee ballots. So we had a tremendous amount of absentee ballots voted in this past election, and we've already gotten instances of outer envelope total numbers not matching the number of actual ballots, absentee ballots. We've heard that out of Gwinnett County. We're very interested in that number in Fulton County as well. And so we, the Georgia GOP Executive Committee, unanimously called for an audit, as we've discussed before on your program, of those signatures, and also to check the outer envelopes versus the ballots themselves. I will tell you that the Speaker of the House, of the Georgia House, called for that as well. And Governor Kemp, even when he certified the election, he made clear that he thinks there was irregularities and that these ought to be looked at. And so he's called on the Secretary of State as well to address that issue.
And actually, the president today tweeted. Can we get that tweet up? President Trump was also tweeting today that he's basically calling on the governor to do something to get those ballots looked at to match the signatures. And he also thinks the number of envelopes versus the number of ballots, you'll just find, there's many more ballots than there are envelopes. So a number of issues there, which I know, Garland, you've also been looking at. So Garland, why don't you jump in there?
Right, Cindy. So there's 3 lawsuits, as you mentioned, and one of them is Lynn Wood's lawsuit, which is really more of a constitutional challenge on the signature, reducing the signature restrictions and the requirements. And then there's another lawsuit to try to get the entire election thrown out, but that was John Wood's lawsuit. Those, I believe, are high hurdles to make. But what I think it's going to come down to is Sidney Powell's lawsuit, and that is the one where I expect her to get a court order to inspect these ballots and do what Brad is saying, compare the signatures. And we also want to look at invalid ballots. So were there invalid ballots, particularly in Fulton County, where there are 4 affidavits pending from very experienced poll workers, saying that while they were counting during the audit, they noticed ballots that just seemed to be manufactured, and they were not true absentee ballots and with handwritten instruments. So I think that this will eventually come down to Sidney's lawsuit and that court order, assuming that she is able to get that order. And then the inspection that will transpire after that, and then that will open the door where we can determine where there was fraud in the most suspected place, which was the absentee ballot processing that Brad is talking about. So you couple that and also with the Fulton server crash that happened today that stopped recount processing. That's a very bizarre situation that just occurred. And they have to restarting. They're flying in a tech from Colorado, a Dominion tech, to try to repair the server and save the ballot. But they've already started imaging or re-scanning everything. So if you couple those 2 things together, a court is going to have to order that all this technical equipment be impounded or at least preserved, and then that the ballots be inspected. And that's going to really tell us whether or not there was enough fraud to overturn this election or not. And I think that is an easier hurdle because even a state court judge who is a Democrat and who is faced with irrefutable evidence of fraud will in fact throw those ballots out, I believe.
So, and speaking of the machines, yesterday, Judge Timothy Batten decided, undecided, redecided to halt. I think there were 3 decisions he made yesterday to halt the wiping or the resetting of the machines that were used during the election. Is that all connected to the ability to do forensics on them?
Absolutely, Cindy. Well, one of the, particularly when it's in regards to the counting of Dominion. Now, he did decide to, I think, preserve, I believe it was Cherokee, Cobb, Fulton, and Gwinnett counties when he re-rescinded his order. But we're looking at some other counties. We have found vote flipping from Trump to Biden in another smaller county, which we're going to announce tomorrow. And we think that there's some solid evidence that either there was some ballot definition mismatch or possible Dominion malware outside of the major metro Atlanta counties. So we're hoping that they will also get those that systems in other counties, certain counties, preserved so that we can do the forensic that's necessary, forensic analysis.
I see. So that'll be coming out tomorrow, announcement of that one.
Right, right. We're working on it.
All right.
That's a Voter GA special.
All right.
Exclusive for you.
Excellent. I hope you all heard that. So my understanding is that in order to really get to the bottom of anything that happened, there's sort of two forensic processes that are going to be required. One is the software, the machines itself, and then the other one is actually physically looking at all the ballots to see, are there any ballots there that look like they were, mass printed or mass filled out or something like that. So are both of those things being asked for in these legal cases that are before the courts currently?
I think indirectly, yes, they are. Well, they have not been asked for yet. I believe that they will, in fact, be asked for. I think that there are things in the works where I'm not sure about Lynn's case, but I think Sydney's case will ask for that. Not sure about John Wood's case. It's hard to keep up with three different sets of attorneys and three different sets of investigators on all these cases. But I don't think the request has actually gone in yet, but I think it will have to, particularly in light of what Fulton County, what happened there today with the server crash and the attempt to, reconstruct everything with an out-of-state technician.
Was there suspicion around that today, or is it just, hey, looks like we really can't trust these machines after all?
I think that was a technical malfunction. I don't think that it was necessarily nefarious in any way, but it raises a lot of more concern about the Dominion software, which has already been under very, very tight scrutiny in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and Cindy, I just think there's been a lot of issues around Fulton County altogether. I mean, we had major issues back in June, which is why an inspector from the Secretary of State's office was assigned there, Carter Jones, and has been on the ground in Fulton County during this general election. That was part of the settlement agreement that he was to be included, and that's part of the problem. I mean, the came up earlier. That started the counting 4 hours late at 11 a.m. on election day, which of course pushed everything later into the night. Then, of course, we had the announcement that they were going to shut down for the evening for 10:30, and our Republican poll watchers were sent home along with the media. A Fox 5 Atlanta reporter was there and actually left at the same time our poll watchers. They were told they weren't going to resume till the next day. And then we found out that they actually did resume, and they started scanning ballots. And as we found out later, there was a gap in time, about an hour, that no one was there, including the Secretary of State's inspectors. And so one of the things that really is called into question is why wasn't Carter Jones called, the assigned inspector? And it wasn't until another inspector, James Calloway, showed up there and saw the counting was going on and no one else was in the room. That we became aware of all this. So just it's those kind of red flags that just really raise eyebrows. I mean, why would you do that with no one else there?
And Cindy, just to add to Brad's point, that period of time is almost the exact period of time in which, according to the Edison line feed, a lot of Joe Biden ballots were dumped into the Georgia count. So that adds an additional level of
went over there because I think he was fully expecting the votes to be going on, and then he gets told that it is shut down, and when he gets over there, they're actually still scanning ballots.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got to wrap up here, but a lot is going to be happening this week, so I hope you'll both find time to come back and update us later on.
We'll be at you.
All right, have a good evening.
Anytime, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up after the break, where do things stand now in Pennsylvania after last week's public hearing with Trump's legal team? But first, here's America Q&A.
Well, in Alpharetta City Center, we've got people all around here. We did great. We had crowds in.
We were actually pretty close to last year's sales.
Not quite as much as what we expected, just with all the guidelines and everything. I think people are staying home.
It was really good. We had a lot of people out, more I would say than last year.
Definitely a different year this year. You know, sales were not as great as they were last year, but we still had some loyal customers that came in.
Very good, very good. We did very well that day, more people out than kind of expected.
We were still pretty steady. We didn't have nearly as many people out as we normally do just because of COVID and restrictions and everything, but it was pretty busy.
Typically Black Friday is really, really slow for us. So we were excited to have a little bit more pop, and I think a lot of the big box stores not doing as many of their big Black Friday blowout sales helped with that too.
It was terrific, to be honest. We had a ton of customers, and the really cool thing is, even though we have a lot of like COVID restrictions on like limit of number of people we can have in a store, most people have been really generous and really like understanding, especially because we'll have people like wait outside while we rotate through our customers, but they've been awesome. Everything's actually been really good this year.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Welcome back. Last week, Pennsylvania was the first of several state senates to hold a special hearing to hear direct evidence from Trump's legal team and witnesses on a variety of voting irregularities. The Republican legislatures were presented with enough evidence that they were convinced to move to the next steps. And those next steps are playing out as we speak. Here to tell us what we can expect in Pennsylvania is Walt Tuchalski. He's the communications coordinator for the Adams County Republican Committee. Walt, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much, Cindy. Glad to be here and happy to share some information on Pennsylvania.
Right. So today was a big day in Pennsylvania. What ended up happening? In the House?
Yeah, no problem. It's somewhat unusual for most people, but in Pennsylvania, the General Assembly's term of office ends by constitutional prerogative on November the 30th. So today was the last day that they could be in session. The resolutions that have been drawn up prior to today were basically blocked by constitutional prerogative also, because it takes 3 days for a resolution to pass through the House and another 2 days to get through the Senate.
So let me just back up just briefly. These were resolutions that came out of the hearing that was held last Wednesday in Pennsylvania, where Trump's legal team came and presented
That is correct.
Okay.
the GOP majority in both houses had wanted to push forward resolutions to decertify the election as Secretary of State had certified it, and to take back their privilege under U.S. constitutional law to appoint the electors. And we basically ran into a dilemma of our own constitution, timeline, and deadlines. And so as of right now, it appears there is no course of action the legislature can take except to advise and consent to the governor.
So have the legislators decided their next approach, their next steps?
It appears that their next steps would all be in the court, which is the same as the Trump legal team. The Trump legal team has taken matters to the court, and in fact, there are some court cases that have made it to the U.S. Supreme Court. So we are awaiting action on those.
So it seems like now then, too, we just heard from Georgia that it looks like it's going to be a very high hurdle to try to, bring back a special session there to have this kind of hearing, and now it's blocked in Pennsylvania. I know Arizona was talking about doing the same today. So it seems that path is getting narrower. So it seems like the courts.
Yeah, there's here in Pennsylvania, if there was to be a special session between now and the seating of the new General Assembly in the first week of January, it would have to be called to order by the governor. Our governor, being a Democrat, is unlikely to want to do that.
Right. So do you feel like something shifted in Pennsylvania, I guess particularly among the Republicans, after Wednesday's hearing when they heard all the evidence firsthand in terms of, I suppose, their conviction to follow this through?
Yes, absolutely. On Wednesday, the evidence that was being presented by Rudy Giuliani and 15 other eyewitnesses who were very knowledgeable in their fields of expertise and were actually on hand on the night of the election and afterwards, trying to do their job and observe the vote counting. There was so much compelling evidence of how and when the wrongdoing probably occurred, where any potential for fraudulent ballots was inserted into the system, and that the hearings went and awoke a lot of people in the legislature at how broken the Pennsylvania system is right now for electing people. And the bottom line, they all agreed on Saturday when they met in GOP caucus that they have to get to the bottom of this and fix it for the future. But also they need to do something about what appears to be an unreliable election right now and try to find out if indeed who the true winner was of the Pennsylvania presidential election.
So it seems in Pennsylvania, the issues at hand and that are being brought forward with the cases, there's a lot of voter irregularities, but on the constitutional question, which is one that could go to the Supreme Court.
Yes. And that question was basically about the governor and the judicial branch back in September making rules that went beyond the law written by the state legislators to extend the receiving of the ballots past the 8 p.m. deadline on Tuesday. All mail-in ballots, regardless of when they were sent out, needed to be in your courthouse by 8 p.m. on Tuesday election night, according to the law. But the governor got a 3-day extension from the state Supreme Court, which would appear to be in violation of U.S. Constitution and Pennsylvania constitutional law.
So presumably the remedy that's being sought there would be to have all those late ballots tossed out. How many are we talking about, and would that change the outcome as we now know it, i.e. a Biden victory in the state?
I have been trying to find out how many late ballots came in after 8 p.m., were received after 8 p.m. on Tuesday, and that number is not readily available. I have not been able to find it. I do know that in the hearings on Wednesday, Rudy Giuliani actually pointed out that the state of Pennsylvania had apparently mailed out 1.82 million ballots for the mail-in ballot applications that were applied for.